Today I'm going to cover entries to Peacock Pose. So the Peacock Pose position is like this. Now it's much more accessible than some of the other strength movements like the bent arm planche or the 90-degree handstand push-up. So we can enter and exit from this position in lots of different ways. So I'm going to cover a few of those today. Now before we start, obviously we need a peacock position. So let's just run through the basics of how to get into it. Now you'll normally see this taught with fingers towards the back. Now there are some limitations to this because if I handstand this way and I want to get into this position, I'm going to have to rotate the hands on the way down. But let's just initially cover it with fingers towards the back. So I want to bring my elbows in towards my hips. Yeah, so I'm leaning on my elbows. And then I'm just going to try and transfer enough weight forwards by taking my head and shoulders down and forwards to counterbalance what's behind the hands. I should be able to get into a point there where I get that seesaw effect, where the shoulders go down and the hips come up, and I want to try and find a point of balance. Let the legs sort of do what they need to do. Now from that point, we can start to make it longer, so I can start to extend the legs behind me. But if I don't do anything with my head and shoulders, I'm just going to get heavy towards the back. And I'm going to fall down. So at the same time I take my legs backwards, I also need to take my head and shoulders forwards. And that's what counterbalances the legs. Now one way of making this slightly easier is to take the legs out to the side, which decreases the length I'm sticking out the back and doesn't demand so much leaning forwards. So I'm also pushing up with the chest, head and shoulders as I do it. Now we can obviously progress that to a straighter body position, which does demand those shoulders and head to go further forwards. So I'd recommend before you start playing with the transitions in and out of the position, you first get very comfortable with changing the distance and find out where your boundaries are of the balance. So you should be able to comfortably start in a closer position, open to an extended position and come back. It's just not everyone's going to be able to go to a straight body position from the get-go, and they'll have to slowly progress towards that. So now when we start looking at transitions to it, the first one I'd start with is a crow. So a position that's a little bit higher than the peacock position, and I'm going to slowly lower down into that peacock. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to change the hand position now before I start. So it's going to change the peacock position a little bit, but I'm going to now have my fingers more out to the side or even slightly forwards. There's still a lot of external rotation, so I'm more into this position, which is going to allow me to get into a comfortable crow. So I'm not too worried about how you do your crow, just get in a comfortable position for you. So fingers are out to the side. And then as I come down, I'm going to bring the elbows in towards the hips. I'm going to start to extend the body out a little bit and find that peacock position there. So the secret of that one is just holding the balance throughout the transition. You don't want to just have the crow, have the peacock and fall between them. I want to be able to do a slow transition into the position. You could then do the same thing but make it much higher. So I could be in a higher crow position and then I'm going to come down, open out. Another fun one to play with is the transitions from the side, in and out. I would start first by learning this, doing the out. So I'm going to go into that peacock position again. Again, I'm going to have my hands somewhere in the middle. I'm going to go more out to the side as opposed to backwards, just because it gives me more options to the front. Find that peacock position. I'm going to open the legs out. Now I'm going to push over to one side and kneel down. Now, the big thing with this, if you watch what the elbow does, so I'm here, I'm going to bring or keep my elbow on top of my hand when I do that transition. If the elbow moves away from the top of the hand, that's where it's really going to hurt the wrist, or you're just going to collapse onto the floor. So very important you dig the elbow in as you move the body and you don't take the elbow with the body. Now to go back, all you're doing is reversing the movement. And obviously get it on the other side as well. Now the fun one, we're going to do it from a handstand down into the position. Now obviously there's a prerequisite here that we have a freestanding handstand and we have a freestanding eccentric handstand push-up, or we can make that slightly easier and do an eccentric lower to crow. So I'll show you the full version first, so the one we're aiming for, and this is going to be the hardest variation because I'm going to keep the body straight as I come down. Notice the hands are out to the side, and then as I come down, I'm bringing the elbows in to meet my torso, or my torso to meet my elbows. Now straight off, I could make that easier by just going into a straddle instead of keeping the body straighter, or I could just come down to a tuck position. So same thing, handstand. And now as I lower down, I'm going to bring my knees in towards tuck, elbows in. Now I open out to the peacock. So a nice in-between one, if you don't quite have the lower down straight into it, is we could go to crow first, find control, and then from there open into the peacock position. So rounding my back, finding my elbows into the side, into the hips, open up into your peacock. I have a separate video showing how to train the handstand to crow. So definitely check that out if you don't quite have that movement yet. I'll go into a little bit more detail on how you can roll the spine down, get the knees into the arms and find that crow position. Hopefully you found that useful. That's a really good one if you're heading towards things like the 90-degree handstand push-up, or just want to start playing with transitions between different arm balances. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Thumbs up and subscribe will be appreciated, and I'll speak to you next time. Thanks guys.